Американ күндүтүн өкөт менен чындын бою именно Вашингтон, DC. Не слухата. Хамтыршы гүрнүде. Американ хамтыршы гүрнүде. Мына форум икелке войны. Часто икелке войны. Да, сэмбина. Ямар долдну кубитка. Шины юты, гарнитуры волонтарите. Как слышно, скажите, пожалуйста. Меня зовут Ринчин Гамбоев, я нахожусь в Вашингтоне, DC. Сейчас просто заранее не уведомлял, потому что сам, как говорится, не мог понять, попаду я сюда, не попаду. В общем, проводится очередной форум государств построссии, который назывался раньше Форум народов построссии. То есть это как раз 41 примерно 41 государство, которое должно возникнуть после дезинтеграции России. Так, как меня слышите, пожалуйста, напишите в чат, сейчас пока я, может быть, меня совсем не слышно. Так, вот сейчас переключу на камеру. Так, сейчас камеру. Да, хорошо слышно. Угу. Да. На прошлом форуме, который в Америке проходил, я тоже участвовал, принимал участие. Вот здесь. Угу. Здесь вот одна. И вторая. Тут сразу одновременно, так как всего один день прохождения форума, поэтому здесь уже начался вот эта вот часть. Сейчас попробуем повыше поднять. Вы видно, там вот уже сидят люди. Ну пока. Да, видимо, уже началась трансляция. Есть телеграм-канал форума «Свободных государств России». Можете, если что-то там, по-моему, организовано. Происходит на базе Джеймстоуна, фонда Джеймстоуна в Вашингтоне. В прошлый раз тоже, по-моему, так проходил, я просто не смог туда попасть. Вот это получается одна панель, а вот здесь вот рядышком будет проходить вторая панель. Значит, наши спикеры, я в этот раз как спикер не участвую. Это одно помещение, оказывается, я просто в обе стороны они. По удаленной связи выступает Анна Фатыга, да? Помните, в Европарламенте, из Польши. Депутат Европарламента. Там, когда Марина Николаева участвовала в форуме, сейчас я переключу на себя. Так что приветственное слово началось с Анны Фатыги. Она из Польши, и, видимо, из Европы сейчас вещает, из Брюсселя, скорее всего. Ну, вот остальные, большая часть спикеров сегодня на этом форуме, они будут все в основном офлайн, то есть непосредственно, так сказать, непосредственно уже в самом помещении. Народу много, достаточно представительный форум. Здравствуйте, Олег Дунда тут. Скажите, сам Бана, нашим бурятским зрителям.
Да, я очень рад видеть нашего друга.
Я один раз участвовал только в Нью-Йорке, к сожалению, сюда не успел попасть. В прошлый раз, когда был.
Наша цель победить, и мы достигли эту цель.
Правильно? Конечно, конечно.
Все.
Да, вместе с Украиной. Да. Так, это был Олег Дунда, представитель Украины. Вот сейчас давайте. Достаточно очень сжатый формат, потому что всего один день будет проходить. Будет перерыв на обед, кофе-брейк. Кофе-брейк проходит. В общем, вот такие вот моменты. Там видно Олега Магалецкого. Пошел руководитель этого форума, да? Идейный организатор. Вот. Да. Ладно, Фатега продолжает выступать. Это, оказывается, одно помещение. Я думал, это два помещения. Просто вот люди сидят с буквой Г. Вот на углу. Чаемэна, да? Вот я просто первый раз использую гарнитуру. Как было слышно? Пишите. Олега Дунда хорошо было слышно? Так, где-то у нас должна быть Раджана наша, Марина. Тоже должна выступать. Сейчас покажу, как это выглядит. Ну, видите, оказывается, это один зал, а я думал, это два зала. Да, выступает там Фатега из Европарламента. Да, рабочий язык английский, поэтому... Ну, цели и задачи. Сейчас давайте немножко отойду, чтобы не мешать людям. Так. Вот цель и задачи этих форумов, в общем-то, когда он начинался, вот в прошлом 22 году еще, на нем на первом форуме участвовал наш Зуртан Халтаров. Потом он еще на третьем участвовал. По-моему, онлайн участвовал и Артем Бурлов. И Артем Бурлов на третьем форуме как раз был на месте. В смысле, в Праге проходил. Потом и Зуртан Халтаров там выступал как раз. Я помню его интервью журналисту украинскому Питеру Залмаеву, где он сказал, что Бурятия обладает запасами урана, и, соответственно, нам есть возможность создать портативное ядерное оружие, да? Правильно же? Ну так, чтобы можно было из автомата им стрелять, да? Примерно так. Патроны ядерные. Такие вот. Вот, кстати, видимо, отель. Сейчас покажу вам вывеску самого фонда, где проходим на основе этого фонда. Вот написано Jamestown Foundation. Находится в Вашингтоне, да? Это вывеска. Так. Да. Ну, приветственное слово где-то там на Фатеге. Поэтому будем, кто у нас тут с русским языком, попробую кого-нибудь интервью взять, если получится. Сейчас. Олег сильно занят? Нет, ну, коротко.
Добрый день.
Да, Олег, приветствую наших зрителей.
За независимую Бурятию,
да,
потому что
да.
это форпост для того, чтобы остановить авторитарный режим не только Российской Федерации, но и КНР. Вы будете центром геополитического в Центральной Азии.
Но вы же в курсе, что противодействует наша система, да? Имеется в виду путинская. Именно в Бурятии будет создан первый штаб по борьбе с сепаратизмом.
Поздравляю, это хороший признак.
Почему-то, да.
Ближе к
плюс две какие-то области, там, не знаю, Воронежская.
Орловская.
Да.
Очень парадоксально.
Да, очень удивительно, поэтому, видимо, надежда, видимо, у спецслужб тоже, видимо,
у вас
на
все
Бурят.
получится. Смотрите, у вас все получится. У вас есть пример прекрасной Монголии, как государство с самой невыгодной геополитической позиции в мире, затиснутое между КНР и РФ, может построить не только демократическое, но и успешное государство.
Да.
С 92 года они были фактически де-факто колонии, да? То есть у них не было независимости.
Ну, к сожалению, это, мы считаем, все равно Монголия до конца не освободилась, так же, как и Казахстан, допустим.
Осилили дорогу идущий. Это
вот Украина только сейчас, видимо, освобождается.
Это процесс, но Монголия тоже далеко зашла, поэтому и у вас все выйдет.
Да, все,
Я
спасибо.
надеюсь, я смогу приехать в независимую Бурятию и прогуляться по свободному
У нас-
Улан-Удэ.
Да,
и
Олег
где вы
Галецкий, это
стоите?
как раз вот руководитель этого форума, да, идейный организатор. Да,
Независимая
получается.
Бурятия нужна
Да.
всему миру. Успехов!
Украина, да. Все будут Украина.
Спасибо.
Давайте. Так. Такое дело. Такие моменты. Так, нас смотрит 38 человек, 16 лайков поставили. Ставьте лайки, делитесь трансляцией, подписывайтесь на наш канал. Возможно, я буду еще как-то включаться здесь, поэтому такие моменты. Народ, спикеры. В основном, кроме меня, видимо, все спикеры. Поэтому сейчас вот, да, Нафатыга продолжает выступать. Вот. А еще раз, как хорошо было слышно Олега Магалецкого. Напишите, пожалуйста, в чате. Вот. Потому что вот этот гарнитур, который у меня сейчас в ухе, он какой-то, ну, такой направленного действия, скажем так, у него звук. Да. Да. Всем бы на будет много чего, да. И как тут не без участия, видимо, вот этого штаба по борьбе с сепаратизмом и экстремизмом, да, который возглавляет Алексей Цыгенов, у нас МПН Алексей Цыгенов. Но вы же обещали, когда его открывали, этот штаб, что ежемесячно будет заседание. Что-то уже сколько времени месяцев прошло с декабря месяца, да? Что-то ни об одном заседании не слышно. Или он слишком секретный, да? Или место встречи вы ему секретите, чтобы, не дай бог, какой-нибудь украинский дрон не прилетел в этот штаб. Вполне возможно, поэтому, ну, какие-то решения должны выноситься же, или что? Как вы будете бороться с этим? С этим бороться невозможно. Невозможно бороться с естественным процессом исторического развития. Невозможно, потому что если империя рушится, то она рушится окончательно, никогда она не возродится. Так что не это первая империя, возможно, одна из последних, но если считать Китай как империю, то, возможно, предпоследняя. Поэтому вот такие моменты. Я специально подальше ухожу, чтобы там не мешать и вести. Поэтому, да, Магалецкого было хорошо слышать. Спасибо. Так, что там пишет визита? Вот уже Фатыга закончила выступление. Сейчас я посмотрю по списку. У нас тут есть список выступающих сегодня. Так. Вот. Панель 3 почему-то написано. Что? Панель 4, а панель 1. А вот здесь написано панель 1. Сейчас, извините, просто немножко все болтается. Да, флаг А4 был только что, действительно. Не знаю, привезли ли наши посол в Бурятии. И те же вот. Тип ограничивается печенькой. Сейчас будет следующий выступающий. Вот.
Okay, well, my colleagues are taking their places. I want to extend really my sincere thanks to Oleg Magaletsky for putting such great colleagues. At first I was taken aback by having so many people in one panel, but then I looked at the bios of all the speakers that were speaking today, and I was literally blown away. They're incredible people with incredible biographies. I'm going to introduce them now, and then, by the way, at each panel. But I'm going to introduce my panel today. We are going to start with Paul Gobble, who is a senior fellow at the Jamestown Foundation. And he is also a long-time specialist in ethnic and religious questions in Eurasia. Paul has distinguished career working for the government, advising the State Department during the breakup of the Soviet Union, and now providing his insights about what is happening.
Ну, вы там увидели в президиуме Значит, представитель братского народа бурята, получается, калмыцкого народа, батыр, не знаю, там сидит с левой стороны. По-моему, как раз представитель Чкири. Сейчас я вот посмотрю, как его зовут. Сейчас посмотрю. Комитет Северная Кавказских наций, комитет Шамиль Албак. Вот, скорее всего, это он. Значит, открывает заседание вот этого Free Nations построссии форум Питер Матис, по-моему,
I've given my paper to Maria, so I'm going to be very brief. Anyone who wants my fuller thoughts on this, I can get a copy from her.
We're going to publish it all on our website.
Right. Most people in the West today, unfortunately, still assume that the coming disintegration of the Russian Federation will be quick and easy, that it will be something like what happened in 1991, and that we will be, the West will be supportive, the Russians will be supportive, and the divisions within the Russian nation itself will not be important. None of those things exist. And I think we just have to come to terms with this. I'd like to focus on some part of that. I am absolutely
вот сейчас выступает полуглубок, к сожалению, он удаленно. Полуглубок как раз занимается на специальности Советского Союза. В общем, выступает полуглубок. Питер Матис, может, уже выступил, а просто я уже не... Потом была Анна Фатыма, как раз, да, действительно. Так, вот в первой части где-то до 11 часов выступит Айсет Сабдулаева, Чеченская республика. Так. И так, ну вот Марина Захалаева должна 4-й, да, после Шамиля Албакова выступить. Так, сейчас полуглубок выступать, потом Асет Дулаева будет выступать, Чеченская республика Ичкерия, потом Шамиль Албаков, представитель комитета Северного Кавказа, народа Северного Кавказа. Вот такие моменты. Так, дальше. Потом Батырман Пармагнаев и Василина Орлова, но она будет онлайн. Это антрополог, есть свой канал Василина Орлова. Дальше завершится это все Норма Зарубина. Так. United Nations написано. Представитель организации ООН, видимо, да? Ну ладно. Вот такие моменты. Сейчас начались выступления. Наш Раджан Дугар-Депонт уже будет после перерыва, когда будет перерыв второй части, сразу начнут выступление. Вещание тоже идет на, так сказать, ресурсе, видимо, Gemstone Foundation. Вот. Поэтому такие моменты. Так, у нас смотрит 31 человек, 32 лайка. Вот, делитесь трансляцией. Сейчас я, может быть, вот Раджану, к сожалению, упустил. Там где-то была. Не могу. Посмотрим, что происходит.
Ethnicity is not going to be the primary factor. far more important is going to be regionalism within the Russian nation. The biggest problem we have in talking about the future of this part of the world is that people don't address the fact that the Russian nation is itself a myth. The tragedy in this part of the world is that the Russians became an imperial state nation before they became a nation in revolt. The Russians who live in Vladivostok, as opposed to the Russians who live in Königsberg, are as different as the Americans and the Australians. And we had better start figuring that out. But instead, we tend to ignore the regions within the Russian nation. And it's going to be those that will determine outcomes. Because if they do not matter, and that is the working assumption of an awful lot of people, then we will have a situation where the overwhelming Russian majority, led by a revanchist government, will engage in actions like Ukraine again and again. What is necessary to make the disintegration of the Russian Federation work is for the Russians themselves to have
Глобал сейчас выступает специалист по Советскому Союзу в свое время, так называемые были советологи. Человек был уже достаточно в возрасте, ну, соответственно, и что происходит теперь на постсоветском пространстве, конечно же, этим занимаются американцы, анализируют все, что, какие процессы происходят и так далее, все это, как говорится, Америка всегда в курсе, да? Все, что происходит в мире. Так что, ну, это естественно, поэтому очень важно проведение форума именно в США. Второй раз. В прошлом году это было трехдневно, в этом году, видимо, в один день. И онлайн-спикеров очень мало. То есть все, в основном, те, кто может приехать сюда, либо те, кто живет уже здесь, в Америке, участвуют в этом форуме. Вот такие дела. Так, сейчас, наверное, плохо слышно, да? Сейчас. Так, Улан-Удэ, друзья, да? Раздаться. Так. Там вижу. Займи место в зале. Ну, надо как-то сесть, конечно, да? Попробую. Кто знает английский, будем слушать по-английски сейчас. Да? Так. Так, в эфире 23 минуты.
That the periphery will come back because it had nowhere to go. There's not anyone now who thinks that Putin has that view or would adopt that kind of strategy. And that ally that the non-Russians had, in the person of Boris Yeltsin, simply isn't available in Moscow today. And that's going to make this process harder. My own view, and it's one I've written about many times over the last 20 years, is that what's coming is going to be that Russia is indeed a failing state, but what is coming is going to be far more like what happened in 1918, when the state dissolved and then was reassembled by a newly mobilized central regime that was able to achieve what it did, because the West provided just enough support for Moscow, the Kremlin, to target the regions on the periphery as being handmaidens of outside powers, but not enough to allow them to win. There's an enormous danger. That's what Putin is trying to do. There is an enormous danger that will be repeated again and again, especially if those seeking independence in the future place their hopes in the West above all. It's going to have to be in your hands, in the hands of your peoples. And it's going to require that they adopt a much more long-term strategic approach than most of them have up to now. I think the danger that we will see a process of growth, of contraction, and then re-expansion, and then contraction again, in the Russian case in the coming decades, just as we saw the efforts of the Ottomans to do the same in the absence of outside forces. And it was a war, World War I, to destroy the Ottoman Empire completely, and even then it didn't go all the way, because I would remind you that the largest nation on earth that doesn't have its own state are the Kurds. And they're not a state because of Turkey's position. This is going to be that we are, what we will see will be much more problematic. Now, those who want to help the non-Russians and the ethnic Russian regions to achieve independence, freedom, and democracy have got to remember, have got to do 3 to 5 things. First, the West needs to recognize that it made a terrible mistake in 1991 when it had just proclaimed just about everyone a Democrat and assumed that privatization of the economy would solve everything. I've often said that the greatest tragedy for the former Soviet space was the triumph of the University of Chicago economics department in Western thinking. The idea that economics would determine everything. Economics has done nothing to keep Putin from invading Ukraine. And that's something which, unfortunately, Western governments and Western analysts still don't understand. Second, for all the problems that the disintegration of the Russian Federation will involve, and those problems will be highlighted by all kinds of people in all kinds of Western governments that will argue we must do nothing because it would get worse, need to recognize that the only way forward to a peaceful world where democracy and freedom are possible for large numbers of people will be to dismantle the Russian Federation, the Russian state. And that means transforming the ethnic Russian myth into a variety of peoples, into a multitude of nations themselves. If we're not willing to do the things that will make that possible, then the future for many people is not going to be good. Third, the West, and this goes to others as well, but must recognize that there's going to be some kind of Russian state at the end of all this. There are too many people who are happy today to put up maps that don't show any Russian state remaining. There's going to be one. It's probably going to be centered on Moscow. And it's going to be large enough and well armed enough to create real problems for all or most of the others. That simply has to be understood. That is not an argument for not doing something. It is an argument for recognizing it and thinking about what is necessary to constrain that state so that it will be less likely to invade its neighbors. It will be less likely to repress its own people. Much of the discussion about what's happening now in the Russian Federation ignores that reality and somehow acts as if, well, if we can just have somebody better than Putin, or we can just have the non-Russians, or a third of the population go away, that will be enough. I promise you it won't. We should have learned that lesson in the last 30 years. Regrettably, we haven't. Fourth, and this is going to be the hardest thing for people in the West, and especially in the United States, to recognize. The obligations, the challenges, and the burdens that we are going to have to assume to make these kinds of things happen are going to be greater after this process starts than they are now. That means we have to view them as a long-term investment in a stable, peaceful, and democratic world. If we're not prepared to do that, then I fear we will probably cause more trouble and help fewer people. And finally, and this is something which I know a lot of non-Russians don't want to hear, it's absolutely essential that cooperation be promoted between various groups of Russians and the non-Russians, both in the areas where they live and more generally. The two silences between them are extremely dangerous. If there isn't that kind of cooperation, if there isn't a recognition that there are multiple Russias and there are many non-Russian nations that should become states, then it isn't going to be a good future for either. Now, as many of you know, I have long been and remain absolutely committed to the freedom and independence of all the peoples of what is now in the Russian Federation. I've said things that a lot of people don't like. In 1994, when I was asked in Latvia whether Latvia should be a member of NATO, my response was no, the real question is whether Bryansk Oblast, next to Moscow, should be a member of NATO. I'm in favor of a very much more forward policy than we've ever adopted. But at the same time, on the basis of having been in this business for now 5 decades, I am also convinced that those of us who are involved must recognize just how difficult this is all going to be, rather than assuming that we are in a situation where by saying the right thing, convincing a few people to respond positively, everything is going to fall into our laps without difficulty. If we aren't willing to admit that and make the commitment required to make a difference, then there is a very great danger that we and those who that we and the peoples we want to hope may be dragged down into the dustbin of history along with the Russian Federation, which I'm quite convinced is headed there. If not in this decade, then certainly in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will take a little bit more time for Paul to talk to you today because of his vast experience and his insights and kind of to set the frame for this discussion today. Now we're going to have a few last minutes for all of our next participants. So let's stick to 6-7 minutes at the most so that we can finish on time and allow the next panel to start on time. Our next speaker is Aseta Abdullaeva. She is the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, founder of the Union of Chechen Youth in Quebec, Canada. Thank you, and thank you for coming here today from Canada.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference. It's a great honor for me to be here in Washington, and thank you for inviting me here. In 2002, when I was 11 years old, my mother, who is the people's artist of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, was invited to Moscow for an interview. She took me with her. When we arrived, the Russian journalist met us, and she looked at me and said to my mom, "Don't take the subway with your daughter." My mother was very surprised. She said, "Why?" And the journalist replied, "You are blonde, you look like Russian, but your daughter has the features of a person of Caucasian nationality. You might have problems with local militia. It means лицо кавказской национальности." And my mother was shocked. Years later, when I started to reflect upon the incident and the reaction of this journalist, I understood that her reaction was caused by the phenomenon of Caucasophobia present among ethnic Russians and spread by Putin's policy of demonizing the Chechens. So I find it's important to understand the roots of the Chechen and Russian conflict. Historically, the relationship between Chechens and Russians has been characterized by the Russian willingness to use the overwhelming might to suppress the Chechens' will for self-determination. In fact, during the Great Caucasian War, the Chechens were represented by the image of a wicked Chechen who weds his dagger kin, as it is written by one of the greatest Russian poets, Lermontov, in his famous Cossack lullaby. During Soviet times, Stalin accused the entire nation for alleged support for Nazi invaders and deported all the population to Kazakhstan in Siberia, and labeled the Chechen people as enemy of the state, although it is a historic fact that Nazis, Germans, never reached Chechnya. So 50% of the population perished en route to Kazakhstan. In 1994, when Yeltsin launched a full-scale air and land attack on Chechnya, Yeltsin labeled the Chechen resistance, bandits, the regime as criminal, and the head of Chechen government, Johar Dudayev, as mad. Later, Putin portrayed Chechens as uniquely a criminal nation and Islamic terrorists. In fact, upon coming to power, he right away struck a chord with the Russian public by promising to waste all the terrorists in the outhouse. So the Chechen people are victims of Russian propaganda and are being used as a scarecrow to scare everyone away from the Chechen state. And the truth is that Russian imperialists, including Russian liberals, until this very moment support this narrative and deny the existence of the Chechen independent state. It is a fact that the Chechen independent state is a legitimate state as was USSR. The Declaration of State Sovereignty adopted on 27 November 1990 was in full conformity with the USSR legislation. It is also a fact that in May 1992, the government of Johar Dudayev signed an agreement on the apportioning of weapons and military equipment with the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Pavel Grachev. If Johar Dudayev had really come to power after an armed rebellion, as it is claimed by all the Russian imperialists, including liberals, there would have been absolutely no question of transferring arms and military equipment to the government he headed. After the defeat in the First Russo-Chechen War, Russia recognized the sovereignty of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, de jure and de facto, concluding a peace treaty with Chechnya in May 1997, where both states were designated as subjects of the international law. Russian imperialists refused to admit that Russia committed war crimes in Chechnya. There is a lot of documented evidence about the fact that Russia's tactics in Chechnya were not in keeping with the Geneva Convention and its commitments to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Vacuum bombs, deliberate attacks on civilian populations, ethnic cleansing, torture, sweeps, everything has been used in Chechnya, which resulted in the death of 300,000 Chechen civilians, including my father, 42,000 children, and the death of democracy in Russia. In fact, Putin's rule has been synonymous with eradication of political opponents, anti-democratic reforms, suppression of free press, and demonization of Chechen people. Putin turned Russia into a unitary state and established a autocracy with the Russian chauvinist imperialist ideology at the heart of his rule, which transformed into a form of fascism, one Führer, one Russia, and for Russians only. And this chauvinist imperialist ideology, until this very moment, is deeply admired by all Russian so-called liberals. By adopting the policy of appeasement, by tolerating Putin's narrative, and accepting the black hole of lawlessness on the Russian side in Chechnya, the world, the West, has unfortunately raised a monster which is today threatening the entire world with a nuclear weapon. So what's next? How do we deal with this crisis in Eastern Europe? The West must realize that to achieve a long-term, substantial peace in the region, it can't just sweep Chechnya under the carpet as it has done for the past 30 years. Yes, the Soviet Union collapsed, but the evil empire did not fall apart precisely because the West convinced Ukraine to sign the 1994 memorandum and did not recognize the independence declared by Chechnya and Tatarstan. It's time for the West, and in fact, the West didn't commit the same mistake if it continued to listen to Russian liberals who want to save the great Russian Empire. It's time for the West to change its policy towards the occupied Chechen Republic of Ichkeria and Caucasus. It's time to follow the example of Ukraine and recognize the sovereignty of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria as Ukraine has done it on 18th October 2022. The Chechen government in exile is closely working with Ukrainian authorities and is willing to cooperate with the United States of America and the European Union. We need diplomatic and political support and financial support. Our capacities are very limited because we lack funds. We can't mobilize all our forces because we don't have financial means for that. I can assure you that the moment we receive support from the West, it won't find any better ally than the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. Even Tolstoy said that Chechens are true friends and worst enemies. And we stand with the United States of America, we stand with Ukraine, We value freedom as much as Americans do because we have been fighting for it desperately since 18th century. And I find it's amazing that today I can sit here in Washington and represent my country without being afraid that I will be killed or kidnapped, as it happens in Russia, when anyone dares to speak about the independent Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. The United States of America values freedom and democracy, and that is why we're looking forward to US cooperation. And finally, let's not forget that the defeat of Ukraine will be a disaster for the entire civilized world. It will be indeed the end of history, but not in Fukuyama's way. It will be the end of history where Goliath defeated David. The first president of Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, warned the entire world about the disastrous consequences that the Russian Empire would bring if not stopped in Chechnya. Today we can see that Russian Federation is igniting the sparks of terror all around the globe. And that's exactly what Johar Dudayev said. 30 years ago, the United States of America abandoned Chechnya. And the only wish I have today, now, may this never, never happen again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will move quickly to our next speaker, Shamil Abakov, who has a PowerPoint presentation. He is the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Chechen Republic. He is the Vice Chair of the Committee for North Caucasus Nations, and he's also Honorary Consul of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in France. So he is going to be presenting on his organization.
Thank you.
Can you start number one? Okay. Thank you. It's on this one? Okay, it doesn't have number one reference. Okay, sorry to dispose. When you can start talking, will they put the presentation up? Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm proud that there is an important delegation of our committee here. Myself, Iyad Yuhar, Cherkashin in USA, and our chairman, Captain Adel Bashqawi, who is also Cherkashin and vice chairman of our committee, and many guests here representing the Cherkashin diaspora in USA and the Chechen diaspora. Your presence here is a testament that we didn't surrender and that we will continue our struggle for the independence. I will limit my speech explaining 7 points of our strategy. So the first point is the necessity to support Ukraine. The government of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, led by Ahmed Zakayev, and our committee started from the first day of the Russian aggression to support Ukraine in all the spheres, defense, politically, in the media, by every means that we have. So we are appealing here to the Congress of USA to continue to support the Ukraine because it's vitally necessary to continue to help the Ukrainian resist the Russian aggression. It is needed for Ukraine, for the North Caucasus, and for all the civilized world. The second point, the North Caucasus. It consists in the creation of the North Caucasian Army in Ukraine. While Russia is becoming more uncontrollable, genocides and wars against the population of the North Caucasus are possible again. Persecutions and murdering of hundreds of activists are going on in North Caucasus now. In Ukraine, the Prime Minister of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, Ahmed Zakayev, managed to form the army of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. And we must do all we can to obtain necessary support to advance that process. This army has double function: helping Ukrainians to resist Russian aggression and prepare to the liberation of the North Caucasian territories. Every day, the Chechen army becomes a real modern army, legal, internationally recognized, trained, respecting all the conventions, respecting the Convention of Geneva, coordinating its actions with the Ukrainian army and all our political partners. And when the time comes, that army, those combatants, will be ready to protect the population of the North Caucasus from Russian aggression and will assure stability and peace in the region. The third point is the necessity of creation of an international media platform for information for all the North Caucasus nations. News, discussions, analyses, culture, broadcasts about the different languages of the North Caucasus and other content is necessary. The Russian opposition has many effective media platforms, while we have very little media. They don't accept our struggle for freedom. They just want us to stay in the Russia in the Russia of their dreams. They don't accept our struggle for independence. But we don't want the false Russian Federation and its FSB methods, neither the so-called new beautiful Russia of their dreams. So we have two propaganda sources working against us: the Russian state propaganda and the propaganda of the Russian opposition. So we are very concerned by this point, and we need support to have a media, efficient media, to work in that direction. We are more than able to establish independent states and form in the future a confederation of North Caucasian nations, like the European Union. That is the mission of our generation now and of the generation of our children. And the media is the most important tool to help achieve it. The fourth point is establishing political alliances. We are working on establishing political alliances between Western countries and the government of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria in exile and our North Caucasus Nations Committee. This work started in Ukraine, and we need other countries to join that process. It is in the interest of our people and in the interest of Ukraine, as well as Europe and USA, that the North Caucasus becomes free and able to form a civilized region of prosperity and development. Built on the principles of democracy, it will open many possibilities for the world economy, investments, resources, transport facilities, trade, military alliances. The fifth point of our strategy, we ask and we demand the recognition of the genocides and the condemnation of the continuing systematic crimes committed by Russia against Chechens, Ingush, Circassians, and the other people of the North Caucasus. And that was committed, all these crimes were committed throughout the history of Russia, throughout the three periods of Russian history: the Tsarist period, the Soviet period, and the so-called Russian Federation period. The Ukraine has already recognized and condemned the genocide of Chechens and English. the resolution of recognition and condemning the genocide of Circassians is in preparation. And we want the other countries to join this process. In 2018, the government of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria sent a document listing all the crime of aggression, the war crimes and the crimes against humanity to the International Court of The Hague, Criminal Court of The Hague. But the absence of political will and the fear of Russia caused a total ignoring of this document by the International Court, and that must change. The sixth point, we are working on the preparation of economical scenarios of development of our region. And it's important for us to have experts and experienced politicians to join us in that work. Finally, the seventh point, we would like to alert everyone. Russia threatened the world with nuclear arms, then with the energies, gas and oil, then blocking the export of Ukrainian cereals. And now they are using again extremism and terrorism to threaten the world, trying to stop the support for Ukraine. We are working every day on the social network and with our diasporas, alerting our people not to follow the manipulations of Russian proxies using religion. Islam has its place in our society, and it is a religion of peace and progress. And we are successfully providing our people with peaceful, true, and civilized language of our religion. The three non-Catholics will not represent any threat to the world. To the contrary, it will be a region of stability and modernization, and a model of multi-ethnic and multi-faith states respecting different religions, different traditions, respecting the human rights, and doing all in favor of development and prosperity. We are sure that in all these points we have common interests, and we ask you to work with us, and so the independence, freedom, and the development of the North Caucasus will be achieved. Many thanks to the organizers of this conference, to the John Jamestown Foundation and the Forum of Post-Russia, of the free people of Post-Russia, for the possibility to address directly here in USA, in Washington, D.C., all our partners and friends, and to present our struggle for the independence to the American society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will turn now to Batir Boromangnaev, who is chairman of the Congress of Oirat Kalmyk people and also member of the Free Nations League. Thank you.
Good morning. I am glad to welcome to the participants of our conference. We are at the entrance to a new geopolitical era. The reasons for this include not only corporate strategies, new scientific discoveries and technologies, artificial intelligence and climate change, but also the unreasonable ambitions of the leader and the people supporting him in a country that has become a banal victim of mass anger, self-indulgence, resentment, and the desire of revenge. My name is Batir Boromangnaev. I am the chairman of the representative body of my nation, the Congress of Oirat Kalmyk people, and I'm a member of Free Nations League. For the last 35 years, I have been professionally engaged in politics, as well as in public investment, human rights, party activities, business, teaching, historical education, etc. As it turned out, in the conditions of Russia, practically everything I was engaged in, except politics, was politics, pure, underground or official. And today I will talk about what I have been engaged in politics for these 35 years. Dreams that the Oirat Kalmyk people could become the owners of their own independent state was born in the earlier 1990s. But after Putin's arrival, people's consciousness became infected with thoughts of a great Russia, not Kalmykia. Gradually, people began to realize that it is impossible to preserve their culture, traditions, language, their ethnicity, or simply to develop in this criminal Russian state. It is a reverie, self-deception, and utopia. Either our people and other peoples will sooner or later be eaten up by purposeful assimilation, or they will be killed by obedient service to the Moscow homeland. This is exactly what is happening in the case of Russia's war against Ukraine. Tens of thousands of people from among non-Russian peoples are sent in the interests of Putin and the Russian Empire to commit war, crimes, and death. The alternative and the only guarantee of liquidation of a threat not only to the peoples living within Russian state, but also to all mankind is a termination of existence of Russia and creation of independent states on this post-Russian territory. I must say my people have had several independent states in the past. Now, I just want to list what an independent Oirat Kalmykia would be and what benefits it would bring to United States, Europe, Ukraine, and the whole world. Oirat Kalmykia has a favorable position in many respects and is part of several historical, natural, geopolitical, cultural, economic areas and macro regions at the same time. Territory of the Republic of Kalmykia is part of the Black Sea Caspian macro region and the northern Caspian Sea. It has a long coastline of the Caspian Sea with a shallow shelf, located within the Caspian oil and gas province. Estimated hydrocarbon reserves are about 20 billion tons of fuel equivalent. It occupies a transit position on the north-south, Russia, Transcaucasia, Iran, and east-west, Central Asia, Ukraine. Trade routes and may become part of the bridge between Europe and Central Asia. It's located on the path of the shortest air routes between Europe and East and Southeast Asia. This is territory through which a significant part of the Caspian Oil Pipeline Consortium passes, which annually pumps about 70 million tons of oil from Kazakhstan and southern Russia to terminals in the Black Sea. It could be used as a route for new oil pipelines from the Caspian Sea to Ukraine and further to Europe. can be used for fiber optic routes and the information traffic from Europe to Asia. May be of interest for the diplomatic, economic, and military presence of the United States, European Union, NATO in the Caspian Basin area. This is a small part of what I would like to say. I'm ready to talk about it in more details, as I have a lot more to discuss on the topic. Welcome to our independent tour at Kalmykia to all our friends. Thank you.
Thank you, but it's so important to stress the economic opportunities and the potential of those regions and how they can sustain themselves if and when they become independent. I would like to invite now Vasilina Urlova with her online presentation, online talk. Vasilina is an anthropologist. She is at the University of Texas in the United States. She studies Siberia, post-Soviet ruins, immobility and potency and toxicity of Soviet effect. Thank you, Vasilina, for being with us today. Is she here? She's there. Right? Can you hear us, Vasilina? I don't think we have her. All right. Then we have Yuri Terenkov, who is at the Fletcher School. He's a visiting scholar at the Fletcher School at Tufts University right now. Otherwise, he's a political analyst and media manager. He's also going to speak to us online. Yuri, thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning in Washington, D.C. Thank you for inviting me to speak at your conference. I'm sorry for not being in D.C. These days. So I don't plan to present any particular region or nation here right now, but I want to share with you my recent research on the crisis of Russian nation building, Russian nationhood that I did during my stay at the Fletcher School recently, and hopefully it's going to be published in full soon. When we hear Putin's assertion that Russian borders do not end, are we compelled to ask, is it merely rhetoric or reflection of a deeper truth? In light of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, questions about the essence of Russia's identity surface, urging us to scrutinize its social and political landscape more closely. This examination challenges the conventional notion of Russia as a unified political entity, and here I totally agree with Mr. Gobel. Therefore, it becomes imperative for us to reassess conventional perspectives on Russian identity and explore alternative pathways forward. Through this exploration, we aim not only to grasp the tapestry of Russia's reality, but also to pave the way towards a sustainable peace. Let's embark on the brief exploration of nationhood and the process of nation building, considering whether Russia's experience aligns with established theoretical paradigms. Benedict Anderson's seminal work, Imagined Communities, provides a valuable framework for understanding nations as imagined political communities. Anderson's insights underscore the pivotal role of collective imagination in fostering a sense of belonging among diverse populations, challenging the notion of nations as fixed entities and highlighting their composite nature. However, the conventional dichotomy between civic and ethnic nationalism put forward by the scholars like Michael Ignatieff fell short of encapsulating the complexity of national identities. Ignatieff's advocacy, for example, for good civic nationalism over bad ethnic nationalism oversimplifies the intricate processes of identity formation, particularly within culturally diverse contexts like Russia. There in Russia, the government has often utilized such distinctions to quell dissent within breakaway regions like Chechnya and to justify aggressive actions against neighboring states. Instead, scholars like Will Kimlicka or Gregory Yuzdanis advocate for a more holistic approach that integrates cultural dimensions and political representation into the fabric of nation-building endeavors. The historical trajectory of nation-building in Russia reveals a complex interplay of imperial aspirations and autocratic rule. As noted by British historian Geoffrey Hosking, the omnipresence of monarchy inhibited the emergence of a cohesive nation state, perpetuating a political landscape marked by autocracy and stagnation. Attempts by the emperor, for example, Nicholas I, to cope to the concept of nationality as a metaphysical bond between the ruler and the people, firmly embedded the development of representative governance, essential for modern nationhood. Furthermore, Russia's expansive territorial conquests and militaristic culture have profoundly influenced its historical development. Research by Russian historian Alexander Etkin sheds light on how the Russian Empire's expansion contributed to the colonization of various ethnic groups and the assimilation of ethnic Russians in its core, shaping Russia's relationships with its subject. The term Russian itself has undergone significant evolution, reflecting shifts in rulers' vision and political context. As we navigate through these historical and theoretical insights, it becomes, in my view, evident that Russia's identity is far from monolithic. Its complex tapestry of cultures, histories, and political dynamics necessitate a nuanced understanding and re-evaluation of traditional paradigms. By embracing this complexity, we can chart a course toward a more inclusive and peaceful future, not just only for post-Russia, but for the broader international community. And as we delve deeper into the complexities of Russian identity and nation building, we confront contemporary challenges of imperialist legacy and the rise of Putinism. The confusion of nationalist fervor and imperial nostalgia underscores the task of navigating divergent ideologies in today's Russia. While Putinism's stronghold rests on notions of national greatness and post-Soviet resentment, it faces opposition from the ethnic minorities and alternative forms of Russian nationalism that challenge the state's hegemonic narrative. The task of redefining Russian identity amidst historical this baggage and present-day hurdles present a formidable yet imperative task. Unlike the trajectories of many European nations, Russia's journey toward a unified national identity has been marked by deviations. Under Putin's regime, this paradigm rooted in statist imperialism has supplanted the notion of modern political nation, limiting Russian identity to adherence to the state agenda rather than individual self-identification, roots, or cultural affiliations. It begs the urgent question: can Russian nation building pivot toward alternative, non-authoritarian foundations, thereby fundamentally reshaping the continent? Alexander Etkin's recent book, Russia Against Modernity, casts light on Russia's struggle against progress, highlighting its reliance on fossil fuels and exacerbation of social inequality. Etkin foresees potential scenarios for decolonization, or as he said, calls it defederalization, suggesting that Russia may face fragmentation, but potentially giving rise to self-sufficient and probably successful entities. However, the realization of such scenarios hinges on the cultivation of a coherent narrative and new national identities. Without this, these potential transformations may remain elusive or exacerbate existing grievances. To avert further resentment after the breakup of the Russian Federation, it is imperative to empower communities seeking the empire-less future and the establishment of their respective national homes, including those for ethnic Russians. One avenue for defining the identity of ethnic Russians lies in, for example, Ilya Lazarenko's vision of a Russian nation state with Russia or Zaresia, Such a state would encompass some regions in the Russian ethnocultural core in European Russia. This approach aims to provide ethnic Russians, or whatever they choose to call themselves, with a home defined by clear boundaries and historical cultural foundations, countering the expansionist rhetoric prevalent in Moscow's discourse while following a Eurocentric path. The unique experiences of regions like my own northern homeland, Pomoria, may serve as exemplars for the redefinition of nationhood on new grounds. By prioritizing local and regional identities and nurturing a sense of rooted cosmopolitanism, pro-democracy civil society groups can counterbalance the Kremlin's homogenizing narrative, fostering a modern national identity rooted in the rich diversity of their respective cultures. The empowerment of grassroots resistance, the preservation and celebration of local heritage, and advocacy for decolonization present, in my view, promising avenues for reimagining post-Russian identity beyond authoritarian and imperial legacies. Though this path may be bumpy, I know this, but the rewards charting a new course along this. And it falls upon us to take the first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yuri. And now we have our last speaker for this panel, Noma Zarubina, who is an anti-war activist, a researcher of Central Asia and information warfare in post-Soviet states. She was also an NGO representative at the United Nations Economic and Social Council in the past. She lives in New York. Thank you very much, Noma, for being with us today.
Thank you, Margarita, and good morning, dear colleagues. I was born and raised in Western Siberia in Tomsk, and today I want to raise awareness about several things related to Western Siberia. This includes, of course, the region's natural resources, scientific and cultural heritage, and the impact of propaganda on the younger generation in Siberia through different tools, first of all through universities and specific youth forums. In addition, I want to draw attention to students from post-Soviet states. If you follow specific news about higher education in Russia, Russia issued the most significant number of higher education quotas this year for foreign students, not only from post-Soviet territories, but from other countries as well. But however, we all have to understand that actual motive behind the Kremlin's offer is not to promote some scientific cooperation between states and regions, but to re-educate or educate young specialists with current Russian political standards. They aim to make young students, first of all, ideologically, but also financially and socially dependent on pro-Kremlin narratives and Kremlin-controlled institutions. And Tomsk has become a popular destination for international students who are often recruited for pro-Kremlin projects under the appearance of education initiatives. This is part of a larger strategy by the government security services to create a network of groups that are loyal or can be loyal in the near future to the Kremlin. University administration are often involved in such collaborations, which aim to engage young professionals for political objectives in Russia. So dictatorships often manipulate young people at forums and conferences to secure their future power. The Kremlin uses students and researchers as tools for current and future propaganda efforts. Also, Tomsk possesses a cultural and scientific heritage of global value, including its wooden historical architecture. Unfortunately, we cannot restore many wooden buildings in Tomsk because our architecture is not an economic priority for the Kremlin and for the local authorities as well. In the near future, we can lose this heritage. So the history of scientific centers in Siberia is shadowed by pain due to political repressions from the past and the practice of exiling highly educated individuals to Siberia in previous centuries. Just some historical facts. So how we all know, thousands of people were imprisoned, murdered, and tortured in labor camps in Siberia, especially until 1953. In the past, Soviet authorities masked places where thousands of people were murdered. As an example, Kolpashevsky Yar, this is a big grave with people who were shot and hidden by their own authorities. However, the truth was hidden only until 1979, when part of the bank of the Oak River collapsed, exposing the brutal reality of the past for people. But even after this discovery, the authorities tried to hide this event again. A large number of individuals living in Siberia don't know about such essential stories about our region, because such stories are never included in our school programs. The significant state control in Russia has led to the banning of non-profit organizations, such as NGO Memorial, for example, which advocates for the rights of victims of Russian repression. The Kremlin has been using the manipulation of people's memories as one of its most effective tools. It's a fact that most people are not aware of the dark side of the Soviet history and about the current situation in Russia. In other words, we don't know who we are. The gradual influence of disinformation on the younger generation can lead to specific consequences. First of all, this is aggression towards some nations, mainly European and North American countries. It can also lead to an inclination towards conspiracy theories and a tendency to constantly perceive the United States in a negative light after being educated in Russian institutions. Russia's leadership seems exclusively focused on its own interest while exploiting other regions to satisfy its own desires. People in Siberia fail to recognize the significance of local heritage and the richness of Siberian land. As a result, we are missing out on huge opportunities for success in tourism. Many Americans ask me when we can go to Siberia, when we can travel to Siberia to see the real Siberian winter, to feel the real Siberian vibe. But my answer is always, I don't know, because I'm afraid to go home. And I think you're afraid to go to Russia too, because of politics. Moscow's leadership has developed a long-term plan to exploit the resources, but also population of Siberia. Moscow heavily relies on natural resources from Siberia, such as wood, coal, gas, oil, diamonds. Using this money, the Kremlin has brutally continued attacking Ukraine for more than 2 years already. Western Siberia is a hostage of Kremlin's desire to increase its wealth and power. When we free ourselves from Moscow's control, we can gain a deeper understanding, first of all, of our history, unlock our full potential of the region, invest in the growth of our region, and have the freedom to be ourselves. So, and I just want to conclude my speech with a citation from Financial Times, which is, "What happens in Siberia matters to the rest of the world." Very short and very true. Thank you.
Thank you, Nama. And we'll continue with the topic about Siberia. We have 6 more minutes left. Vasilina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. The topic of our panel is captive nations and captive regions. Just yesterday, the news went viral of the dwellers of Oranienburg Oblast in Russia, who cooperated to block the water from raising and flooding their homes. Earlier, a dam in Oranienburg broke. The people came together to create a dam that prevented the Ural River from inflicting further damage, in addition to the damage that the flood already caused in Orsk and Oranienburg. The people built a new dam by themselves without the help from the government. Doing things by themselves without the help of structures that were supposed to be there becomes the only form of self-government in Russia that can protect the people from the natural disasters. The government abandoned the people as whatever means and resources the government has. The government directs to the Russian unlawful war of colonial aggression and genocidal land grab in Ukraine. The notion of captive nations and captive regions represents the Oranienburg Oblast in Russia, even if not everybody there might agree. The Russian government has been touting the vertical of power, a notion invented by Vyacheslav Surkov, as a way to justify the uber-centralization along with such notions as sovereign democracy and stability. Everyone can see now that stability was not as stable as it appeared. If anything, The stability of extraction, impoverishment, and depopulation is the stability that Moscow regime is offering to the nations and regions that are currently loosely united by the name of the Russian Federation and the broader notion of the Russian world. The vertical of power is extremely rigid, and the central government habitually adopted an extremely extractivist approach to the regions. During my anthropological fieldworks in Eastern Siberia, I often heard that people complained, and they related the feelings of abandonment, the feeling of abandonment by the central power, the feeling of extractivist approach of Moscow's government. Those were prominent. These feelings were betraying the expectations of a paternalistic government, which comes as no surprise to anyone who observed the video messages recorded by Russians of the content "Putin help us." One of such videos was even recorded in Orenburg Oblast during the recent flood as a result of the broken dam. Looking at such expressions of expectations from the government and a demonstrated loyalty to the government, one could ask if our hopes for self-directedness and local governments are futile. However, the voices of the local intelligentsia, regional intelligentsia, the elites of the national republics, which we hear at these forums, the forums of the free nations of Post-Russia, are not to be dismissed. These voices must be heard and appreciated, and one of the reasons why we hear them outside of Russia more from them coming from Russia is because such speakers are being labeled extremists and terrorists in Russia. They are silenced and imprisoned. These people are doing everything that depends on them to build connections with the allies in the West, in the East, and in Africa. They expand our understanding of colonialism to include Russia as one of the colonial powers. The tasks of the Russians, or at least the way I see it, is not to publish memoirs titled Patriot, as the widow of Navalny announced Navalny's memoir is going to be titled, but in supporting Ukraine and the national liberations movements. The work in Russian by an ethnic Russian that would be worthy of attention will be titled National Traitor. Russia needs to be decentralized, and the Moscow regime needs to lose the ability to gather vehicles and manpower throughout Eurasia for its colonial pursuits, inspired by the vengeful desire to reattribute Kiev as the capital of the Kievan Rus and the cradle of the Russian civilization to the current Russian Federation. The recollections of Rurik and other myths of the Russian statehoods can happen in interviews, but they cannot be the ground of such wild revisionism as Russia is currently attempting. I hope the world may come together once again, together with China and the global South, to denounce the violent unilateral revision of sovereign borders in support of Ukraine's heroic fight and in support of liberation and decentralization movements in Russia. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasilina. Thank you, everyone, and on this wonderful panel. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but we are going to be here all day, and you are going to be able to ask our panelists questions in the meantime, and also during other panels. Please direct your questions to these panelists as well. Don't limit to one panel only. Thank you. We are switching now to the next panel. Another 8 participants here with their take on their own aspirations for independence or more freedom. And our moderator is going to be Tara Smith.
Общий перерыв. Первая часть панели закончена. Во второй части будут выступать наши представители. Аджана, Гардепонт. Так,
We're having like an after party tonight at my house.
Приходится очки снимать, когда читаешь, что мелко совсем.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Не, ничего.
Yeah, I will be here. I will be traveling tomorrow and day after tomorrow, but I'll be back here on Friday. So that is something Monday.
All right, I'll write you now.
Слушай, пока перерыв тоже. Хоть я не выступаю, но все равно волнение есть. Даже если вы имеете уровень английского, который в школе там преподавали, все равно все понятно достаточно. Disintegration, collapse, Russia и так далее. Развал, да. А я не буду, я не выступаю, потому что я не заявлялся. Но тут видите, ограниченное количество участников было, поэтому у нас тут представители, были заявлены 2 представителя от Бурятии. Это Марина Николаева и Раджана, поэтому я так понял, что из Уртан хотел выступить, но слишком много порядка одной конференции. Думаю, достаточно. Такие моменты. Кому-то панели. Вот следующая, как раз вторая панель начнется с нашей Раджана Дубака. Такие моменты. Сейчас. Немножко фруктов. Похомячим маленько.
What is your specific connection to Malabar? Because you're not from Malabar.
Чай попить, в принципе. Ну, давай посмотрим. Сейчас тут у нас, по-моему, всегда приходишь. Там у нас бывает на съезде народных депутатов, а тут представитель и организатор съезда у нас находится здесь.
Это уже второй отчет.
Это для чего-то?
Нет, это вообще
Я
в целом
понимаю,
для всех, для информации. Ну там схема, мы раскрываем все схемы, как происходят санкции. То есть, в том числе с помощью западных компаний.
Да, вообще на всех форумах бывает, по-моему.
А вы журналист?
Да, я журналист и аналитик. У меня шоу, я веду программу, где провожу глубокие интервью с разными...
Так, давайте. Спросим Раджану, сейчас начнем готовить.
It's easier to say to a quiet lady, you know.
Industrialization. The division of the Buryatia-Mongolian Republic in 1937 and the Stalinist repressions. Buryatia has over 700 explored deposits of various minerals, including gold, uranium, tungsten, beryllium, and molybdenum. Yet it is ranked among the poorest regions in the country. Moscow takes all this wealth. I'll give just one example. The highest quality jade deposits in Buryatia belonged to the Idenki Artel Delacha. In 1994, it received a license for mining in the north of Buryatia. Jade began to bring good profits to the Artel, which attracted the attention of the federal authorities to it. In 2012, Rostec, with the help of the Russian Jade Company, whose personnel consisted of FSB officials, squeezed out the deposits from Delacha. In 2014, the Russian Jade Company was replaced by the Trans-Baikal Mining Enterprise, which was also connected to FSB. At the end of July 2023, a shooting incident occurred on the territory of the Uspinskaya Jade deposit in the Oka region of Buryatia. In a video that appeared on the internet on September 2nd, people who look like private security officers shoot at an unarmed man. Jade is also fossicked in riverbeds and valleys of the South Island in New Zealand. In the late 1990s, the New Zealand government vested ownership and guardianship of all Punami jade to the South Island tribe of Ngai Tavu. In Buryatia, the natives, robbed by Moscow, are forced to become illegal diggers on their own land, and like 300 years ago, died at the hands of armed robbers who appropriated their natural resources. Lake Baikal is a sacred sea for the Buryat people. It is the deepest lake in the world, containing 20% of the planet's freshwater reserves. Uncontrolled logging and pollution has brought Baikal to the brink of an environmental disaster. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Buryatia has faced disproportionate losses in the war. Even though Buryats make up only 0.3% of the population of Russia, they form 2.8% of the official war debt, a figure that means that the war is costing our future as a nation, just as Putin is trying to take away the future from Ukraine. So what needs to be done to liberate Buryatia and help ensure its development? Russia will disintegrate not only because we want it, but because the time has come. The process of collapse of the empire is irreversible. The victory of Ukraine is imperative not only for the sovereignty of our nations, but also for the world security. We call on the world leaders to mobilize all efforts to ensure this victory. Russia is functioning because the propaganda and Siloviki hold it together. Wagner mutiny has shown how thin Russia's defenses are. Russian opposition leaders hoping to seize the power after the collapse of the regime do not have a long-term political program. Once the thaw is proclaimed, the system will fall apart. This has been the pattern in the Russian history for at least 2 centuries. The rise of hawks or failed anti-Putin coup would lead to preserving the current imperial system and re-escalating the war in Ukraine. This scenario may occur if the West would strive to keep Russia unified at all costs. Another realistic scenario is the parade of sovereignties, in which national republics assert their independence, fueling Russian imperialistic chauvinism and eventually leading to a civil war. The uncontrolled process of collapse brings unacceptable risks of nuclear weapon proliferation and humanitarian crisis. The only type of plan to ensure sustainable global peace is the controlled dissolution or reconstruction of post-imperial space. A series of steps is required to increase the chance of positive change in post-Russia. First, support should be given to the independence movement of the captured nations of the Russian Federation. The empowering of the Russian so-called liberal opposition
will lead only to either the scenario of consolidation of the hawks or the scenario of chaos. Diplomatic relations should be built with the newly independent states in advance. The neighboring and culturally related countries such as Ukraine, the Baltic states, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Turkey, and the global leaders must be interested to take part in the reconstruction of the ex-Russian space in order to sustain their interests and expand influence. Secondly, it is necessary to explain to Western societies that the risk of continuation of the war and the risks of uncontrolled chaos in Russia are unacceptable. And thus, the only option is the controlled reconstruction of a post-imperial space. Sadly, the world community should insist on key reconstruction principles based on the United Nations ones: denuclearization, peaceful resolution of disputes, protection of rights for all citizens, and accountability for war crimes. These principles are already included in the Charter, Freedom and Independence, signed by the members of the National Liberation Movements united in the Three Nations League on April 6, 2024, at the first Congress of the Three Nations League in Estonia. The captive nations have to be given the opportunity for self-determination and free choice of their geopolitical vector.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cardeponte. You know, I always, when I hear about the stories of those republics, I realize that, you know, this colonization is in particular because of resources, so that Russia can control those resources. And imagine that each nation achieves possibility to invest those resources into development of these nations instead of supporting, sustaining Putin's criminal regime or Putin's imperialistic wars. Imagine how developed those nations could become if those money, for example, could be invested in building dams in those republics instead of destroying dams in Ukraine. I mean, these republics would be like really rich and really successful. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite, we will move from Buryatia to Udmurtia. I would like to invite Mr. Artem Medvedev, who is working in defending Udmurtian language and the culture. The floor is yours.
English, that means hello and welcome in our language. We will talk about the territory somewhere in the middle of the Russia. It's between the Volga River and the Ural Mountain. Not so far in Siberia, like Buryatia, but really not really close to the Europe. My name is Artem, I'm 38 years old, and I started my life in the Soviet Union. So I started my elementary school in the Soviet Union style, and I want to tell like a USSR is often called like a prison of the nation. Totalitarianism, unfreedom, conclusion. So my surprise, Udmurtian Republic stayed much better that time in the Soviet Union. We have tons of the local folk singers, tons of the books, textbooks. We even have the adaptation movies like Rudyard Kipling, Kid on Jungle. We have this movie in our native language. We even have in the late USSR Terminator 1 in Iron Curtain with the Schwarzenegger in the Udmurtian language. And it was like in the USSR prison of the nation. 38 years later, in a so-called free and democratic Russian Federation, what we have? I have to say that in culture aspect, we live way much worse. Our Udmurtian population, unfortunately, is decreasing, and this is the common situation with the all small nation in Russia. First of all, decreasing of the population, and the second problem, we are dissolving. We are dissolving in a big Russia like a sugar in your morning coffee. This is really, really, really sad for me because I would like to save my culture. So I have to say like what you hear about like a free democratic Russia, in my opinion, is a big fake, first of all. 30 years later, we have only few singers, and I personally would like to support these singers. I donate money so they can create some kind of video clips or music. You will be surprised, in the last 3 years, more than 50% of our nation video clips was donated by me. Where our local Ministry of the Culture, where our local Ministry of the National Politics, where is this money? I have to say, we just talk about the cultural aspect, and I asked my subscribers to tell what you're feeling when you live in a Udmurtia, local Udmurtian guys. And one of them said, you know, we had a law according to that law, every parent can choose which language she will use in the school, like elementary school, for the education process of his kid. And when I try to choose in the Sarapul city, I wanna learn it in Udmurtian, my teacher said, no, you make a mistake. Do not choose this box. Only choose, might it have a Russian language? Because anyway, we don't have any teachers in Udmurtian. That's said. Another guy said, I feel like my son, after 11 years in the Russian school, he don't even know about who is these people, Udmurtian, what the culture. And many people don't know how many letters in the Udmurtian alphabet. That's really sad. And why this happens? The culture aspect is just another step of the economic aspect. We send about 70% of all our taxes to the Moscow, and this is exactly the same with the another regions. Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, Mari people, Komi people, Buryatian people, Sakha, Yakutian. We all send our minerals, we have oil in Udmurtia. We have to live like in Dubai, I guess. Do we live as a Dubai? Oh my gosh, you will surprise. No, we live far from the Dubai. Hey Dubai, can you please join Udmurtia in your part? I will be glad. I'm just kidding, sorry about it. So another one part, which is also said, after the world meet this situation with the like a war, or like I wouldn't say special tactic operation in Ukraine, we start to send our guys there. A lot of troops sent to the distance of the 1,700 kilometers. We don't have any common border with the Ukraine. And honestly, I do not understand why our Udmurtian people have to go there and fight with the people who didn't even call them Vatyak. Vatyak is a bad word which some Russians use to describe like Udmurtian people. I guess every nation have these samples, and I don't wanna like I mentioned N words, which was unfortunately used here, but we still have this situation right now, and I'm not really happy about it. What I'm dreaming about, there is a small country, it's named Estonia. This is another small Finno-Ugric territory somewhere in the Baltic Sea, and I guess probably you never heard about it. They are not great. They never have Olympic champions, they don't have any billionaire, they never had a great barrier in the past future, but they lived well. They were part of the Soviet Union for many, many years. And they start to discuss the process of the independence in 1985, when I was born. And right now, they have good economy. They probably not the wealthiest guy in the world. But should you be a wealthiest guy in the world to be happy? No. They live in a peace. They don't have like a really big empire plans. But this is, in my opinion, what we need for our small territory within the Volga River and the Ural Mountains. Thank you so much. Thank
you.
Thank you so much, Artem. We know what you're living from, because Russia was trying to destroy Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture as well, but we have survived, and let's hope that your language, your culture will survive as well. Let's move now to the territory between Europe and Asia, to Ural. And I would like to invite Vyacheslav Afanasyev, who is an expert in journalism, in Russian propaganda, and can tell more what's happening in the world. And once, yes, all number is perfect, he was a trusted person of Vladimir Putin.
Good evening. My name is Vyacheslav Afanasyev. We stay to show the resident of the Urals what it is benefit for the Ural to be free and independent. To be honest, is a difficult task. Residents of the Ural are very reasonable and warm people. This is a future of our people, who are like Americans. Like Americans, we combine the best parts of many nationals: Bashkirs, Tatars, Russian, Udmurt, Germany, Hunter, and Mansi. Just like in America, we have our hot Texas with salted Ural. We have our own called Alaska, Norilsk City. Finally, like the Americans in the 16th century, we understand why we need a metropolis. Moscow doesn't give us anything. Moscow is just takes from us. The Ural need independent. It will get it soon, I hope. What I am sure of this. Let's start globally. If we will look at political procession in Europe, we will see clear dynamics. Great empires have not future. Small or national states are stable, prosperous, and live well with its neighbor. The explanation is simple. Any state is united with patriotism. However, patriotism extends only to what a patriot can call native. A resident of ancient Rome cannot imagine the Egyptian pyramid as a part of his homeland. A London citizen could not imagine himself among the Hindus. As a result, the Roman, British, and Spanish Empire shrank to Italy, England, and Spanish. This is the life of the history. A Moscow can't imagine himself in the Chukotka with Kalmyk prairies or Udmurt with the Rem. These months what the Moscow Empire should be reduced to Moscow. It is just a matter of time and historic process. Our task is to be ready for this moment. The main thing is what the population itself must be ready. Nobody is asking ordinary people to take an arm and go against the Kremlin occupation. But people need to understand what is happening. People should not be afraid of this process. For example, we are confident what a wonderful and rich future await the independent world. With the Kremlin. In the fight for the dream, we decided to turn to the wisdom of the Ural people. We sure the Ural what we are being ready. The Kremlin appoint governments. The Kremlin appoint the owner of our factories. At the same time, last it allow the Ural paid the Kremlin 200 billion rubles in task. The population of the Ural is only 12 million people. Another part of the job in information. The truth to show and talk about how our regions and fighting for their freedom and independence. Show their victories. Thanks to the Bashkirs, our neighbors. This is a way proved what the people can have their voice. In my native Chelyabinsk region, people support the fixed for Kushtal Hill. Today, an ordinary Ural citizen knows a lot about the Ingria and Kalmykia. Of course, we know a lot about our great neighbor, the United States of Siberia. I'm unsure you, if tomorrow in Екатеринбурg, Chelyabinsk, Tyumen, they are not the sovereignty of the Ural, no one will oppose it. Of course, we are not talking about official, the army and the police. They are subordinated to the Kremlin and they will immediately begin military repression. Whoever any repression will cause a strike back. The Ural had a rich experience and armed struck against the Red regime in the 20th of the last century. The Ural declared itself an independent republic twice. The last time was recently in the 19th of the last century. The people of the Ural clearly not what they call live white Moscow. Here are the facts. Imagine a country what has an area of 1 million square kilometers. This is 1/6 part of the area of the enter United States. Imagine a country that divide the Russian Empire in half. North border task the Arctic Ocean and the southern border task independent Kazakhstan. This country have everything: bread, oil, gas, minerals. The country produce atomic weapons and tanks. At population, it's more than 12 million people. Every 4 rubles of Putin empires is money of euro. To summarize the report, I want to tell. We all are the place where the fight with Putin's empire will be decided. Where will be a free Ural, Putin empire will end. We all are an ideal place to start a total liberation movement against Mr. Putin. Ports of North City Road and access to Kazakhstan from the soul, it enables the world community to actively support the independent movement and people, and Egyptian and technology. The Ural are the center of Putin empire. Through the Ural, it is possible to support the liberation movement in both the western and eastern part of the empire. The Ural Republic will not have international of national conflict. We don't have a court national. Absolutely all Ural residents will be equal. The Ural are a territory with high industrial and agricultural potential. Ural will be a prosperity country, and the example of the Ural will show our national advantage of independence from the empire. Finally, the Ural have the highest potential of people for nuclear center, world-class university. All 20% of the adult population of the Ural Republic has higher education. This is an important fact. The level of culture is a guarantee that Republic will not drown in the civil war. The Ural will quickly go through the stage of separatism from the Moscow. Dear colleagues, the independence of our regions is the undisputed future. But I'm sure will the Ural, this future will not come right tomorrow. As an Uralian, I urge the entire world society to focus on the independence of the Ural, on the creation of the Ural Republic. Let me remind to all you of the geographic once again. Where will be a Ural Republic, where we be not Putin Empire, where we are Ural Republic, where will be a springboard for the advancement of freedom both to the west of Putin Empire and to west east. With this, I want to finish my block of speech. I spent 20 years in news journalism. Is recent years I have been living in America, I have seen a difficult picture. Media what work with Russian auditoria in America are afraid to raise the topic of post-Russia. American protest organizations of Russia are afraid to raise the topic of post-Russia. Of course, I attribute this to the fact what the Kremlin owes enormous influence on these people. But these people with you congressmen and senators, why offered wise imperial project to American politicians discussing them anti-Putin protest. It's not a secret. I believe one of the hottest topic right now should be the entry of the post-Russia idea into the US political and media platform. We must break the negative images of what the Kremlin and the imperial oppositionists for around us. We have great speakers, great ideas. We agree what our countries do not need Putin nuclear weapons. In essence, we aim to extend the European Union to the Pacific Ocean. This is beautiful idea. But we need to talk about it, talk a lot. This requires a strong media platform. I'm sure it is time for its to propose an idea to the European and American politicians. Great is scary Vladimir Putin. Sorry, great is scary Vladimir Lenin. Said the idea is starting to be a real force when it takes over the people's minds. It's real, it's a result we create with Soviet Union. Our main task for today is to promote our idea for the people. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. Now we know the best geographical point to start decolonization and decolonization of Russia. It will be much easier if Ural gets independent. Yes, and let's move now to the European part of Russia, of today's Russia. I would like to invite Yakub, the chairman of the International Council of Circassians and well-known human rights activist, American Circassian human rights activist. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. You know, when you come to a conference and Mr. Paul Gogol is giving a speech, you always think about the speech you prepared, and you would say to yourself, I should have prepared a little bit better. You get more information, you get more ideas, and anyway, back in 2007, we had our first conference in Washington, D.C. And it was Circassia, past, present, and future. And of course, the Jamestown Foundation at the time was right next to the American Embassy. And later on, we knew that the Russians were really furious how Circassians were holding a meeting hosted by the James Foundation at the time. Mr. Paul Gogol said earlier that if Russia is decolonized, there will be a Russian state, and probably it will be around Moscow. And I do agree with that 100%. And then my dear sister said
Зайдем. Так, сейчас выступает. Что-то я в списках не вижу. А, вот здесь, по-моему. Сейчас найду. Вячеслав Насер и Яд Йогухар. Председатель интернационального международного черкесский представитель, в общем. Сейчас вернемся. Да. И это Йогухар. Сейчас выступает, сейчас вернемся. Я тут побежал водички, потому что выпить.
Radio Liberty had put a program to speak to the people of Circassia and the Soviet Union and outside in the Circassian language, and that's when the Russians became furious to the point that they strongly rejected how to address Circassians. And why is that? Is because that we did not know, but Russia always knew the potential of Circassians. This is the largest nation of the Caucasus between its diaspora people and its people in motherland. And as we talk about the colonization of Russia today, Russia would not have been able to become the colony that is today if they did not have the coast of Circassia. That gave them the ability to expand their military ability, naval ability and otherwise, to access the warm waters of the Black Sea. And then they had become the bigger evil empire that we see today, attacking, occupying parts of neighboring country, occupying their nations, abusing human rights, and colonizing as much as they want, and they have the intention to even extend their colonization. So today here I am a Circassian activist and has been in the international Circassian movement since 2006. I have most of our colleagues who have been with us here joining us today to participate in this event. And our goal is to raise awareness of our Circassian nation, both in motherland and in diaspora, of the need and the awareness for Circassians inside and outside the North Caucasus to become aware of the tragedies committed by Russia against us and the genocide, the forced deportation, the ethnic cleansing, and the crime against our culture and ethnicity, to a point where we are under the threat of losing most of it. We are the largest nation of the Caucasus, but we are also the only captive nation in the Russian Federation and in the Soviet Union that almost suffered entirely, and it was entirely almost annihilated. Thanks to my friend Zach, the one who brought that to my attention last night. Circassia and Circassian is the only captive nation that Russians actually intended to erase it from history. And that they might have very well done so had it not been really for the true Circassian resistance and the ability for Circassians inside and outside the North Caucasus to maintain their cultural identity to the extent possible. This is one of the most ancient nations of the world. Our times in history is immemorial. Our language is a root European language. Our nation is a European nation on the eastern borders of Europe. We have our own culture, we have our own tradition, and we have maintained those not only in our motherland, but also in our diaspora communities against all lands, specifically here in the United States of America. Needless to say, had it not been for the group of Circassians here in the United States of America, the world would not have known about our hidden genocide, our hidden tragedy, and our desire since 1864 until now to reestablish our existence as a nation. It is the freedom of speech here, the no fear of Russia here in the United States of America that ignited us to make the Circassian world aware for the past many years that there is a need really to advance along those lines. And now we do see a lot of movements throughout the world among Circassians to unite and to advance their own. needless to say that this is the most
Так, к сожалению, у меня тут садится. Поэтому, наверное, мы давайте прервемся. Делитесь трансляцией. Я попробую подзарядить, потом еще раз выйду. Да, он затрабает.